Alright, what's up guys? Today is gonna be a my top 10 favorite books of all year. So I'm gonna do like a quick description, and then if I have any pictures of the books that I've read, I'll put them either here or I'll put them over here. And so let's just jump into the list today. Alright, so the first book I'll be talking about today is called Girl in Pieces, and what this book is about is a girl named Charlotte Davis, and she has a lot of problems. You could tell right off the way. And so you first introduced to her life or lack thereof of life, because every chance she gets, she finds a way to either A, destroy it, B, she ignores what everybody's trying to tell her, and C, she's been hurt by so many people, especially her mother. And you see that throughout her story is that whenever someone brings up a mother figure or talks about their mom and being the best mom ever, she doesn't have that because her mother left her at a hospital while she was very young because she couldn't take care of her. And so, with that whole process of trying to get to know people and get to trust people and get to people actually becoming in her life takes her a little bit longer than anyone else. And so, for the most part, she remains silent through like the first 30 pages of the book. Then once you delve deeper into the book, she's opening more, she's talking to people more. She actually wants people to get to know her and get to understand her and why she became quiet and why she decided to cut off all her hair and just say fuck it to everything, to everyone. And then she meets a guy, and this guy is named Riley. And so Riley becomes a problem because Riley is a drug addict. He is also a alcoholic. So you mix those two things plus her problems, and it's like a bad situation to be in. And so I'm gonna switch you guys over here. Here we go. And so with this problem, you end up noticing that Riley herself doesn't know what to do or doesn't know how to act. And so she begins to trust Riley with everything. And while she's trusting him, he's fucking other girls. He's taking so many drugs that he ends up not in a coma, but pretty close to one because he took so many and decided to say, oh yeah, well, I didn't really love you, but I was just using you to get what I needed. And she needed to hear that because she was relying on him for emotion, for trust, for love, and for everything. And Riley himself wasn't in a good headspace to understand that. And so that's the problem that we entered. Alright, guys, so our next book will be about The Outsider by Stephen King. And so, for those of you who know Stephen King, knows he writes really well and really thought out beginnings, but sometimes his endings can be a little lackluster. But for this one, I would have to say one had a really good beginning and it had a really good ending. The ending allowed you to have questions that weren't answered, and I think that was the whole purpose of it, is that you didn't want your questions answered because it made you want to go back and reread the book and watch it. And when you first read a book, the way he introduces it is that there's this little kid who gets murdered, and I mean brutally murdered. His guts are ripped out. He has to stick up his you know what, and everyone is trying to figure out who on earth would have done this. And the least likable person to get framed for this is the baseball coach, and everyone's confused because the baseball coach works with all of the kids. He's been there for everybody, from the parents to the parents' parents, so he's been there for a while. And so for him to go and to do it, people were saying, well, at first, there's no way he could have done it. And then second of all, why would he do it when his own kids work with him? So it didn't make sense. And so the police were trying to figure out, okay, if it's not him, who's murdering these people? And of course, Stephen King, he loves his horror. He loves his bringing things from the outside world, hence the title, The Outsider. And with this process, he ends up making this person that's not a person, but like almost like a shadow. Like, you ever feel like somebody's watching you and you don't know it? That's what the outsider is for these people in this small town. And so the outsider comes and he's taking all these kids and he's murdering them, almost like the clown. It's like almost like Pennywise. And so he, in the end, they end up saying, yeah, okay, we'll believe in this outsider for now, but we're not going to really do it. It's just because it doesn't fully make sense to the human brain on why someone like this would want to do it. But it only takes a shoe monster in their shoeless form, which ended up being a man who was turned into half shadow because he was so evil in the head and so sick to murder kids like this that he ended up embodying the people that he murdered. And that in itself speaks volumes, because when people murder people, you kind of have to agree that that person that they killed becomes them, and it becomes a small piece of them that ends up destroying them over and over and over again. And so I think Stephen King did a amazing job on writing that and stretching it and making it so to the point where it's like you don't want to put it down. You want to keep going. You want to keep going till you get to the ending. So that is our second book. So now getting into my third favorite book of the year would be a recent book that I just did a review for, and that's Shelter in a Place by Miss Nora Roberts. Now this was my first introduction to her, so I didn't know what to expect and what to think of when it came to the book and the process of the writing style. So when I first got into the book and saw that it was going to be about the mass shootings that has been happening very recently, that has been happening through the decades, really surprised me because it showed that she's paying attention. It showed that she actually truly cares about what's happening. And so she goes into the book. First off, we're introduced to Simone, me, and Tish. Those are our three main people. And so once we're introduced to them, we end up seeing them go into the movie theater, and they're having fun. They're talking about girl gossip. As you know, in high school, that's what we do. We gossip 24/7. If you meet a girl who says who doesn't do that, she's lying. And so, you know, when before the movie even gets to start, the lights go out. And you're thinking, okay, it's gonna be another normal Friday night. You're having fun with their girls, and then bang, you hear gunfire. Now you're confused because you're not in an action movie, so there shouldn't be gunfire playing. And so it takes a minute for people to actually register. Oh shit, this is actually happening. This is a real life thing. We need to get out of here. And so many people end up dying. And it's the way she describes it is so well done, and she shows emotion through her characters so well that you feel for them. You want them to survive. You want your three main characters to survive, and then when one of them dies, you don't know what to do because you're shocked. You're like, she killed off a main character, and you're like, what? Did she really just do that? And so like you're trying to figure out how this went so south and why these boys decided to do it. And turns out it was the boy's sister the whole time who planned it, because she was getting bullied through everybody, her parents, her grandparents, her friends, supposedly so-called friends that she had. And so she wanted to get revenge in the most evil way possible. She didn't want to make a meme about it. She didn't want to tweet about it. She didn't want to do an Instagram story about it. She decided to end her life that night. And she ended her own life that night because she made that decision. And so it was ironic to see how in the ending, she ends up being shot the way her brother ended up shooting one of the girls. And so I thought that was a real touching way of how the universe could work in like full circle and bring it back and still get everyone either got good karma or bad karma within the book. And so I'm glad their friend got justice. I'm glad the families who she destroyed got justice, because no one knew why these boys would all of a sudden decide to do this night, this way. And it just didn't make sense to everyone. And so Miss Nora Roberts did an amazing job on just grasping the fact of just how serious this is and how messed up people have to be to really pull that trigger and to really go with a plan that's so heinous and so cruel, and just say, fuck it, we're gonna do it, we're gonna do this is how we'll go out today. And so that's why it's one of my top 3 of the books that I've read this year. Alright guys, so my next book is going to be book 4, and it's titled Damaged. And so the reason why it's titled that is a really short book. It's like 150 pages. And so this book talks about a husband who's in a marriage, but he's not really happy. And so he ends up meeting this young girl at work, classic, and he doesn't realize that that's the boss's wife that he's with. And so he ends up sleeping with her, of course. And the wife ends up finding out because the husband was so sleazy that he forgot to do the basics, like, take a shower, get rid of the evidence. He forgot to do any of that. So the wife, of course, is pissed. She's angry. She's confused. She's hurt. She's everything that you can imagine. And so she ends up telling him, I want you out of my house. I want you away from the kids. You can no longer talk to them. And the kids are rightfully mad at him as well because you fucked up their lives as well. You messed up a home that was relatively okay and now it's relatively damaged to the point where there's no reconciliation to this. You can't come in and say, I'm sorry, and say, oh yeah, I didn't mean to do what I did, so I'm sorry I did it. And then it was just an interesting read because usually the wife would take the husband back after he apologized, but she didn't. She told him to leave, do not come back, do not touch me, do not talk to me, do not do anything you used to do because you no longer hold that image in my mind. Like, now all I see is hatred when I look at you. And I was really happy that the wife didn't go back to the man because he did. Like, how could you just go and cheat with someone that you've been with for like 20 years? And you had 2 kids with them. So, like, you have a whole family and a whole legacy that you just destroyed because you couldn't keep your dick in your pants and you couldn't be man enough to say, oh yeah, I shouldn't do this with you. I have a wife. And he couldn't do that. And so Damage is really good. And I feel like she did a really amazing job on writing the book and getting the message across that you shouldn't have to settle for less. You should settle for more because you are worth more. So next, I'll be talking about Banished by Joseph Finder. So Joseph Finder is really well at writing books about the business bureau and about business and how people can be so corrupt within the business and pretty much tarnish that business name by doing like simple little things that look simple when we're looking at it, but then it's really problematic and it's really much of a bigger picture than we failed to realize. And so in his book Vanished, we end up noticing and looking at the brothers of Nick and Roger. So Nick is our good guy in this book. So he is working at a business. He notices that his brother Roger has been getting a lot of money, but for the work that he does, the money doesn't add up. And so he's thinking that maybe his brother got a promotion, or maybe his brother is working like a side hustle and that's where he's getting the money from. But then once he starts to dig into where the money is coming from, he realizes that his brother has been taking money from the top of the business, like the marketing people, and been using that for his own personal gain. And so in return, Nick ends up teaming up with the FBI and in a way getting his brother to confess and getting his brother to tell him the whole plan of why he did this. What was the whole purpose of this? Yes, you wanted to get the business back into the family's name, but the way you did it was completely the wrong way. Because with both of the brothers working there, eventually they would have gotten the business back. But because Roger kept listening to their father, who was in prison, Victor, and so that part really messed that whole family up because they don't trust their father. Well, Nick didn't trust their father, but Roger was head over heels because he wanted to pretty much please his father in any way possible, even if it meant putting his life at risk and putting their family's name in the ground is what he did. And so it took Nick getting the both of them to confess both of their parts of the plan, and as well as getting them to understand, look, you can't keep doing this because this isn't just hurting you. The money you're taking is from our business, which means the business is dying. And if you keep doing this, there will be no business anymore. And so they didn't quite understand that. And so they ended up getting life in prison, which they should, because they did some stupid shit, honestly. And so overall, Joseph Finder, if you're really into like the corporate business and you love seeing the corruption and you love seeing people do like an exposed type thing, Joseph Finder is your author for that. All right, so today another book I'll be talking about is The 13-Minute Murder by Mr. James Patterson. And I think all of us know who he is because of his Alice Cross series and all of his other murder books that he's known for. So between him and Stephen King, murder books are their thing. And so with The 13-Minute Murder, you're introduced to two characters who are put at odds because you see someone who's at like their lowest and they're trying to tell you, hey, something's about to go down. But then you also see another person who's like, oh, I'm at my highest point in life. Oh, nothing can happen until something happens to the point where like they're royally screwed. And he does a really good job of weaving these points in, and you're introduced to more people into their lives and why they're built the way they are and why they are in the process of thinking and how they think like that. And so throughout this whole book, you see them trying to stop this murder from happening. And in the end, they end up stopping it. They ended up catching the person or really persons that were behind it. And of course, it was the people at top because that's always the case. And honestly, it was a really interesting book. And if you want to get into James Patterson, I would say start with the 13-Minute Murder and then work your way into the Alex Cross series. Just because that series was really good and it was really well written. And yeah. Alright, now we're going to be talking about another book. So now I'll be talking about Unsolved by David Ellis featuring Mr. James Patterson. So it's co-authors that wrote this. And we're introduced to Miss Emily Dickinson, and she is known for seeing things that aren't really there. And what I mean by that is, let's say a murder happens and you're trying to figure out who murdered them, why they murdered them, and when it happened. She would be your go-to. So almost like Elementary. If you've seen that show, you'll understand. And so there's a murder that takes place. These victims seem to die. It could be a heart attack. It could be an overdose. It could be a car accident, and it looks like a regular accident. But of course, Miss Emily knows that it's the guy that she wasn't able to catch that's been doing this, and he remains nameless throughout the whole book. And so you're confused on why he doesn't say his name till like the very last 50 pages of the book is when he starts talking more of himself as I, and I am that person, and I am God, I am this. And so it's real interesting to see how she goes about it and how she tries to keep her marriage, but she ends up losing it, but she ends up getting it back once she's able to finally put this dude to rest and finally able to understand, okay, I don't have to do this by myself. I can actually have a team with this. And so it's a really good book. And so the next 3 books I'm going to talk about, I'm going to do it very rampant because I know I hate long videos, and this video is already long enough, and I know editing is going to be a pain in the ass for this. So yeah, we're going to do quick run through starting now. Alright. So the next book is This Lie Will Kill You. It's sort of on the lines of Pretty Little Liars meets Riverdale meets Gossip Girl. And so it's about these 5 characters that get invited to a party, and the main girl is trying to figure out, okay, why am I invited to this party? And it ends up turning out that a brother ends up dying. Not her brother, but the side character. And the sister wants to know why. And so it's almost like the Dollhouse in season 7 that we're introduced to. And overall, it was really interesting to see it play out because you can see a lot of references from Pretty Little Liars within it, and you'll catch some of the lines that the author uses from some of your favorite characters. Next, we'll be talking about is The Witch Doesn't Burn in this one, and this is more of a poem that is written, and this poem kind of talks about different things that young girls and adults go through who don't really get that gratification that they need from their parents, their family, and everything else. And finally, the last book is The Princess Saves Herself, which is the overall arcing of The Witch Doesn't Burn in this one. And so she ends up mostly talking about how it's difficult being a woman, how people don't seem to understand you and why they don't understand you. And so she really breaks it down. And author of both of these books is Amanda, and she writes really amazing poetry, and I think you guys should check her out and you'll love it. And that is in the video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.